My statement at this point is, friends don't let friends use the database.
Welcome back to Colors or Crutch. We are coming to you this week from hospice as both of us are sick. My name is Max Sternberg, also known as Wounded Satellite, and I'm joined by the most incredible, also sick co-host, Max P, the Florian guy, the Talion man, the man. Here he is. What's up? How you feeling, Max? Not good, I think?
I'm feeling like shit, frankly.
Yeah, we're sorry that this episode is a little delayed. I was very sick the last few days. I'm still sick, but feeling a little better today. And so the first excuse for not recording on our normal time was 100% me and my inability to function as a human. And then after I was like, fuck it, let's send it, Max was like, but now fatherhood.
Yeah.
And my children.
My kids needed me, what can I tell you? But I'm still trying to figure out how, we have a conversation over Discord about you being sick, and then I end up sick immediately thereafter. I don't understand how you did that.
I mean, I am a contagious little parasite, I guess.
Yeah. Pretty impressive, dude. Pretty impressive. But yeah. So we got a few interesting things to talk about today. But before we jump into that, we are, as always, sponsored by TopDeck.gg.
Welcome to TopDeck.gg, the greatest tournament software in the whole world. Whether you're running an event, playing for the biggest prize, or want to advertise your shop to thousands of players around, we have the software for you. With our amazing intuitive pairing, we make playing Magic an absolute breeze. All of your customers, all your participants, they can check their standings in real time. They're right there for them. They can see their pairings, they can see their results, and they can submit their round without having to turn in any of those crappy paper slips. If you want to play Magic the best way, if you want to use the best software there is, you better go to topdeck.gg.
A few updates. We have, at this point, ordered the playmats. So if you guys got in on the pre-order, fantastic, congratulations. We ordered the playmats from the manufacturer, and as soon as we have them, we will begin the process of shipping them out to you guys. We'll keep you updated, as we do the podcast each week, just to let you know where we are with that, as well as on our Discord, which will be in the link below. I'm very excited to get mine. I'm sure you're excited to get yours too. It's going to be great. But with that, two major topics to talk about. One is Max here went to California, to San Diego, to TC Rockets, is that the name of the place? To participate in the Fishbowl III, which is pretty cool because that's, the Cali tournament that, sometimes had trouble selling out, but not this time. Completely sold out, and Max got to play in it. So we'll talk through some of his rounds. And then after that, or before that, I don't know what we're going to do yet, but we're also going to talk about the latest and greatest update of the CEDH Decklist Irrelevant Database, and we'll get into that as well. So what do you want to?
Why even waste time talking about it? Oh my God!
So I'll explain. I mean, I'll get into.
Sure, we can rant about it for a few minutes. Sure.
Yeah.
But also, I mean, before we jump into the topics, don't forget to like and subscribe. Really helps support the channel. Get us that awesome engagement. Feel free to leave a comment about anything we've said and how you feel. If you don't like us making videos when we're sick, let us know in the comments below. If you want to support us even further as a channel, feel free to sign up for our Patreon. And if you want to join our other conversations, feel free to sign up for or just join our Discord. Both links are in the yeah. Cut all that. If you want to support us even more, feel free to.
I might just keep it. Fuck it.
That's fucked up.
Yeah.
If you want to support us even more, okay. If you want to support us even more, you can sign up for our Patreon. We got lots of perks. You can find the description below. And if you want to join our conversations outside of that, you can also join our Discord. Link in the description below as well. If you're interested in CEDH coaching by one of the people who has just kind of gone on a consistent streak on a bunch of different decks and has proven that I can't just play Kinnan. I can play whatever the fuck I want. Feel free to hit me up. My name is Wounded Satellite, and you can find me on Discord and Twitter as such.
Yep. Let's get into the Fishbowl experience. Tell us about what was the tournament like, how was it structured, and how'd it go, what'd you play, all that kind of good stuff.
This past weekend, I went down to sunny California. This was a really fun event because I got to meet a bunch of the people I've known online since I started playing CEDH, but had not yet met at some of the in-person events. It was really cool to get to hang out and see all of them. Too many people to name my name. You know who you are. It was awesome to meet like all of you. It was a really, really fun time. I stayed with JJ and Jeremy. Jeremy was the guy who played Sisse in like top 4 of the Invitational after like not playing in any Mox Masters, and then JJ is the guy who just like makes everything a JJ brew and like takes a deck and just like adds his own spice to it. Really cool people. But yeah, it was a super fun tournament. It was TO'd by my pillar, my rock in the CEDH community, Alex Heyer. Always absolutely wonderful to see Heyer, one of my favorite people in this world. Yeah, and I decided to bring back the boy. I brought back Kinnan.
Nice.
I was like, you know what? We won one on Talion. It's time to go back on the Kinnan grind again. And Kinnan grind went well. Tournament went well. It was super fun to play the deck. Still had a lot of fun, jamming it outside of the tournament and into the tournament. The games were really, really good. They were interesting. And it is a very strong deck. But this tournament had a absolutely terrifying amount of Kinnan. This was the first Fishbowl. I think they'd mostly maxed out at around like 80 players before in signups, even though they were 128 events. So they'd only ever scheduled it as a 1-day, 5-round, cut to top 16, cut to top 4 event. This was the first time it sold out, and they ended up selling out and adding more people afterwards. So the total count for this tournament, I think, was 134. I thought it was a 2-day event when I signed up for it. So I set my flight for Monday, not Sunday, thinking, play Sunday in the top 16, top 4,
right,
and then fly out on Monday. Turns out it was a 1-day event, so I ended up having like a day and a half extra to just hang with people, which was, fun as well. But yeah, it was a little bit large. It was very much similar to a Mox Masters in that regard, because it was around 140 people, cut to top 16, 5 rounds. So it was very similar setup, kind of knowing how many points you needed and stuff from that kind of stuff. We get into the rounds here, and so round one, one thing about this event, they were running a new beta version of Command Tower, like Command Tower version 2. This was kind of the testing grounds for it. So there were a lot of repairs in this event, the most I've ever seen in an event, as they worked out the kinks, which if that bothers some people, get fucked. What I will say is I will never have any issues with anything having problems as long as it is with the goal and pursuit of improvement and perfection. Like if you're trying to make something better and there are going to be some hiccups in the process of making something better, accept that. That's fine. Like the Command Tower is this incredible thing for the community. If they want to give us some minor issues to make things better later, just deal with it. Don't complain. There were some frustrations from it, and I have some personal frustrations from it, but like it's with the overall goal of improvement. So like no real qualms. But so my round one, I remember my original pod I was paired into, I was going 4th, and there was a Rog side of the play until it was like Rog side into Najila, and I was going 4th. I was like, fuck. And then they repaired, and I was on the play, and I was like, let's go. So my actual round one pod, I was on the play, another Kinnan going 2nd, into Corvald going 3rd, into Obnixilis going 4th. And it was an Obnixilis deck based on my Obnixilis deck. So I knew what was up with that one. People were super nice. One of the things I can say, like most of the people I played with this entire tournament were like really, really nice people, and I enjoyed a lot of the games a lot. But so yeah, I kept a hand that was honestly a little bit sketchy, and I got stupidly rewarded by draws. The game was a little bit weird. I ended up getting out some card advantage with a Ristic study right away. I had like a turn 2 Ristic, and Corvald pretty quickly, I think, pyroblasted it, and I was kind of like, but why? Like, I get it, but at the same time, I was like, but why? We're against multiple Storm players here. You don't have interaction to stop anything. But, that happened, and I was like, okay, like, that's fine. This game kind of progressed in an awkward fashion of us just kind of, like, dealing with and making sure that Obnixilis and Corvald couldn't go off. We had a Manglehorn on the battlefield for the majority of the time on the other Kinnan's board. I revealed a Pongify to both Corvald and Obnixilis when they were, like, considering attacks on their turns, and I was just like, if you want to do that, your call. So I kind of used that Pongify as a way to keep them away from me, because they both really want their commanders in play, and I was like, I don't want to waste this on when I don't have to, because both of you generally want your commanders to win, so I'd rather save it for the person trying to go off, but I will use it if you swing at me. I was able to play a Trinisphere a couple turns into the game as well, which was very annoying for both of them, and I joked at the beginning of the game, I was like, I'm gonna get a Trinisphere, and they were like, please don't. So we got there. It was funny though, I missed the fact that my Trinisphere entered tapped because of the Manglehorn, which Trinisphere is one of those artifacts that only works when it is untapped, so it didn't actually do anything for a turn cycle. And then we got to a place in the game where I was looking at my hand and I was like, yeah, I could win this game here if I could just get another turn. I ended up feigning weakness with nothing better to do, where what I decided to do was just play my Basalt on the battlefield, ETB tapped, leave it tapped, and just pass. Because I think I theoretically could have gone for a win in that moment, but I sniffed out enough interaction that I wouldn't be able to go for it, so I just didn't even put the Basalt on tap trigger on the stack. And I was like, that's fine. Like, I'll just leave it here. Because it was really nice, because as we went around the turn cycle and dealt with other problems, and they were like kind of worried about me winning, and they kind of asked me, they were like, are you going to win? And my response was just, my last turn was playing a tap Basalt and passing. Even though I did in fact have the win. Though what I specifically did have in hand was Treasure Vault as my land. Which again, there is a Mango Horn on the battlefield. So I did have to be careful because we were running out of time. So what I ended up doing was I was able to kind of direct the Obnixilis player slyly to get rid of the Manglehorn, because he had a Dockside in his exile. He had a Mayhem Devil on the battlefield. You know, he had a fetch land, or he had his Urza Saga that was going to sacrifice something that like gave him 1 sack plus the Lotus Petal. I was like, he had, and so you know he was like, oh man, I don't think I get it here, and I was like, what do you mean? You just lose your Urza Saga and crack your Lotus Petal, you get rid of Manglehorn, then you can go off. So I kind of like gave him the line because I actually wanted the Manglehorn gone so I could win. And because me and the Kinnan player had talked for a second because we were worried about Corvald and Ob, but so I was like, I'll show you like the interaction I have for them if you show me yours. And so I showed him my Pongify and he showed me his March of Swirling Mist. So I knew he had an answer to the entire situation that was going to go on here. So I was like, yeah, you just kill the Manglehorn. So he did kill the Manglehorn, and then as he went for his kind of win thing, the March of Swirling Mist phased out the Mayhem Devil, which was really important for me not losing my Kinnan, because Corvald had a squandered resources, I think it's called, so they were going to be able to sack a lot of things, which would kill my Kinnan repeatedly. So I was able to get the Mayhem Devil off the board, get the Manglehorn off the board, and then go to my turn and be like, cool, I have a Trinisphere, that's pretty sick. So first thing I did was try and Pongify Corvald to try and eat out interaction from Corvald.
Yep.
And then was able to play Treasure Vault and win the game. It was a good round 1 win. The Corvald player was a little upset after the game. He was like, I was so locked in on getting to this draw and not giving you a window, and I let up for like 2 seconds when the March of Swirling Mist happened, and I should have not let them hit the Mayhem Devil. We should have communicated. And I was like, yeah, appreciate you. My round 2 pod was super interesting. We were the stream game. You're able to look back on that Twitch pod if you'd like. We'll maybe have a link in the description, maybe not, if we can find it. But on the play was Blue Farm, Matt Bach, really accomplished Blue Farm pilot, done a lot in the Cali meta. Myself going second on Kinnan. We had Matt Sperling, super well-known dude, running a very different version than ours of Talion, going third, into Sergio, very accomplished Rog pilot, going fourth. This was a scary pod. I remember I asked Matt Sperling, I was like, oh, have you seen the waterboarding his backlist? And he was like, nope. And I was like, okay. And then like the second card he played was Dothy, and I was like, in my brain, I was like, you didn't watch the deck tech either. But this game was Blue Farm mulled a 5 and just had a turn 1 wrist stick, and I was like, you gotta be kidding me. And then my hand was really mid. I got really saved by the fact that I top decked a Mox Amber, which allowed me to go turn 1 Kinnan into Birds, which was just way better than the previous plan I had, which was a little more slowed down of just like turn 1 Birds, turn 2 Kinnan, like not really doing much, but holding up a little interaction. And so, yeah, I ramped out way faster. So I was able to go do all that. And then turn 2, Blue Farm plays a Mystic Remora. So now they have Ristic and Mystic. And I'm like, okay. And then I untap and I top deck the One Ring. And I'm like, well, that's gas. So then I have a One Ring. And from this position, going into Matt Sperling's second turn, where Blue Farm has Fish, Ristic, 9 cards in hand, like 5 mana. I have like 2 lands, Kinnan, Birds, Mox Amber, Ring. And Rog Scion Fortsy has land Rog. And Matt Sperling does a play that I think is questionable. I've heard different opinions on it from different people. He untaps, obviously didn't hit his land drop to play Talion, where he kept I think a basic swamp and a mana crypt, and was just hoping to draw land in the first couple draws and didn't. But he plays Massacre because Blue Farm had a plateau, so it was free. I was immediately like, huh? Because like it kills my Kinnan and Birds, and it kills Rog size Rog, but it doesn't touch Blue Farm, who's like by far in the lead at this point. Like Blue Farm has 9 cards in hand, I have like 2. You know what I mean? So it's like, sure, I have the ring, but like he's significantly ahead of me on being able to actually do anything. And in my brain, I'm like, this just hands the game to Blue Farm hardcore. And it also drew Blue Farm 2 more cards just by doing it. I'm like, okay, I feel like I have to fight this because this really only affects me. Like, it takes out Rog's Rog, but like, who cares? And so I go to Fluster it, which draws Blue Farm another 2 cards. Matt ends up like mental misstepping one of them, and then Sperling is able to pay for the other one. And so They're like, okay, that's fine. And so the Massacre goes through. And I talked to him about it after the game, and I was like, why'd you do that? He goes, I wanted to slow the Rhystic feed. And I'm like, yeah, but like Blue Farm was already ahead. And when I'm piloting Talion, I want my opponents at parity. Like, I don't want one of them being significantly ahead, because that is normally a situation that I can't overcome. I want us to all be in a position where we can deal with each other, especially because he didn't have card advantage on board yet. Like, it's one thing if you already have your card advantage on edges online and someone wants to try and go off through them, you draw a lot of cards, find your interaction, you can stop them. But if you have no card advantage, and he didn't cast a single counterspell this whole game, so like he didn't have answers. So he took away me and Rogsai's ability to potentially deal with Blue Farm and just kind of like push Blue Farm really far ahead, because Blue Farm drew 4 cards off of this interaction as well, while just like having all the mana, and completely took me and Rogsai out. And for him, he was like, I wanted to slow the Rhystic feed, but he took away my mana and my ability to pay for Rhystic on future things that I would have, while also feeding him 4 cards immediately. So it was in my head very questionable.
Yeah, we talked about this before a little bit. Like, you know, I'll say this first of all. You know, I met Matt Sperling when I went to Silicon Dynasty last year, beginning of the year.
Super nice guy,
incredibly smart guy, incredibly good Magic player, like really a cool person to get to know if you can. You know, so my opinion about the play is, you know, first of all, you know, his deck is very different than our Talion list. You know, a couple, you know, notable things to know. It's on Adnaz. It is running Dothy, but it's not running Bloodchief's Ascension. It's not running Hullbreaker Horror. It's a very different approach to the deck, and he's running Massacre. And we tried to take some notes from it and like think about his choices and, you know, take them into consideration, because, you know, he's smart. And if he's doing it, it's probably worth thinking about. In terms of the play, though, like, you know, my first thought was when he told me about it was, you know, I get playing the Massacre, like playing the initial Massacre. The free spell has a large impact on the board. You take your opportunity. Maybe it's worth doing it for 2 cards. My problem is what happens after that, right? So you had to fight it. You had no choice. It doesn't put you. You can't be blown out at that point completely, because then there's no way you get back into the game. So you're forced to fight for it. So once you cast that Flusterstorm, that's where I think, you know, the fight stops. Like, okay, you tried to cast the Massacre, it got stopped.
Well, all he did was tap a mana to pay for Fluster.
Well, he said he played a misstep too, right? He played a misstep.
The Blue Farm player played a misstep.
Oh, okay.
Because there were 2 copies of Fluster. So he didn't fight it any further, but I tried to tell him, I was like, man, like, you don't. I tried to say, like, you don't want us to be this disparaged at this time. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So he went to mental misstep to Fluster, right? Because he wants you, right? So Blue Farm wants you out. So at that point, Blue Farm's working with him. So
and Blue Farm's already so far ahead. Like, of course they want this Massacre to go through. They had no creatures on board. Blue Farm had no. But creatures.
You had the One Ring, right? At that point, you had the One Ring.
I had the One Ring tapped for 1 card so far.
Yeah.
And like in my brain there, Blue Farm's winning next turn. They have 5 mana and 12 cards. They have Rhystic and Mystic. Do you really think me having a One Ring at that position in the game matters? At most I get 1 more turn and draw 2 more cards off it. Is that really a big deal?
No, but I guess, you know, from his perspective, you know, how are you really helping with Kinnan at that point? Unless you have like specifically a Fierce Guardianship.
The Massacre kills Kinnan at any time. Well,
it's sorcery, so he has to do it then on his turn.
Yeah, but he can do it. He can do it a different turn. So he's worried about the Rhystic feed, but he took away my ability to pay for Rhystics on spells I would have paid for Rhystics, because I had a Mox Amber and a Birds. Like, he cut me off of essentially 4 mana.
Sure.
Which is good from slowing down Kinnan, sure. But again, like, Blue Farm is a deck filled with 1-card win cons. Absolutely fucking filled with the brim with 1-card win cons. Their intuitions and everything. And like, 1 tutor wins the game there so handily. And I was like, and I literally said, I was like, cool, we lose to Blue Farm here, and then Blue Farm on their 3rd turn puts up a win attempt. I'm able to stop them solely because I have a Colossal Sky Turtle to get rid of Grand Abolisher. Or sorry, they went to Fairy into Kitten, and I had the Colossal Sky Turtle to bounce the Kitten, which they couldn't stop. And they did actually have a line to even win through that they told me after the game they fucked up, because they had another spell they could have cast to blink the Kitten. So, like, they should have won immediately on their turn 3. And I go, okay, untap and, like, try and set up again on my turn 3 now, replay Kinnan and stuff, and then Blue Farm wins on their turn 4. If I still had Kinnan and didn't have to deal with that Massacre beforehand, I would have still had Fluster. I would have had an extra, I think I mini-rifted the thing just to save something. I would have also been able to force a rigor some of his rocks, like actually get rid of Mystic and Rhystic or something. Like, I would have been able to do more, but I wouldn't have won the game. So it would have just allowed the game to continue at a parity stance.
I guess the other argument, too, is, you know, you could wait till Tymna comes into play, and then Massacre's even better at that point.
Exactly. Like, you get more value on that card the longer you wait.
Yeah. But yeah, I'm curious, leave in the comments below, what do you think of the situation? Like, what would you have done? Was it a mistake? Was it not a mistake? I mean, what do you think? I could see it. I could see it both ways. I don't think either way it's a terrible play. I think it's probably wrong in retrospect, but it's not crazy. Put it that way.
No, I don't think it's like outlandish, but I think I wouldn't have done it.
All right, so that was round 2.
Round 3 was where we really had the pairing issues. This was interesting. So in all my events I've ever played, the only events that I've ever faced the same person more than once were like small locals of like 20 people that were actually 5 rounds. Like, that's the only time I've ever faced the same person more than once. So there were issues happening in round 3 where everyone's pods were like having some of the same people that they played against in previous rounds again. And this continued as they repaired like 4 times, 5 times. And then finally they were like, honestly, fuck it. Like, that's fine. If you play against someone again, whatever. So I had Sergio in my round 3 pod as well on the play on Rog side. Which, like, of all the people to have to face twice, I would rather not have to face Serge twice. That's a little ridiculous. He's a very, very good player. A lot of respect for Serge. Very, very talented Rog side pilot. So he's on a play for this one too. So I'm like, fucking Jesus Christ. We have another Kinnan player on very close to my list going second. We have myself on Kinnan going third. And then we have Dylan, one of the guys I got to meet from the Southern California crew, on Tim Najeska going fourth. And Dylan, I know you've been looking forward to this one, buddy. Get ready for these details. So I end up mulling to 5, and I keep a hand that was Menamo, Treasure Vault, Mystic Remora, Endurance, Finale. So I was like, I have the fish for me, and I have the endurance for the Rog Side Tim Najeska players. Let's see what happens. I just keep the land fish hand. And it worked out. Like, immediately my card draws got me like a breeding pool and an elf, so I was able to start a little bit of positive mana production. Rogsai went for a Necro. The other Kinnan player was able to counter it. This game was pretty straightforward, but what was so beautiful was, I think it was like after my turn 3, I've got the fish, I've got a couple mana rocks set up, I have Kinnan on board finally. Like, I was able to develop a little bit of mana production here, which was really, really nice. And we go to Tim Najeska's turn, and they're able to do like the sneaky line of where they can just like Magda straight into Dockside and say, got him. And I'm tapped out. I'm tapped out with my fish, though. The other Kinnan player did have an Archdruid Charm. And this is a very important thing for all the Kinnan players out there. He left up 2 mana rocks to be able to activate Thrasios one time, rather than hold up the triple green for the Archdruid Charm. Never tap out in a way that doesn't let you hold up your interaction. Like, he chose to tap the 2 lands for the Thrasios to be safe that he could do that. He should have tapped a land and a rock, so he was able to do rock and land for triple green and sacrifice the Thrasios activation. You always want to make sure, if you have interaction, you're holding it up, because also if he has an interaction here, I don't draw a billion cards off of what's about to occur, and that's just a better overall. An
interaction in hand is better than a random card off the top.
Absolutely. So learn from that. Never tap out of your interaction. Just save it. just hold it up. That's how you don't lose the game. But so Tim Najeska, Dylan gets this Citadel right in the battlefield and is hitting just straight gas off the top while drawing me a absolute fuckload of cards. And keep in mind, I had the endurance in my opener, so that's still there. So he keeps going for a little while, and he finally throws a demonic tutor on the stack. And in my brain, I'm like, this is totally getting Grand Abolisher, and that's where I'm kind of screwed. I was like, I don't think I can actually beat the Grand Abolisher here. And he tutors, and he shuffles, and he plays a Grinding Station. And I'm like, no way you tutored for Grinding Station. He totally did. And so, yeah, he fucked up and didn't get Grand Abolisher. Realistically, so the reason he got Grinding Station was because of his mana stuff. He wouldn't have the mana to do Grand Abolisher and then Breach from hand, because he already had Breach in hand. So that was his thought process. So after the game, we realized his best line was actually Demonic Tutoring for Vampiric Tutor. And then Vampiric Tutoring Grand Abolisher to the top of his library, and then casting it off the top. Yeah. That was his best line to allow him to be safe while doing everything, because he did not need the Grinding Station. His graveyard was win with Breach. You know what I mean? And from his brain perspective, which obviously I fire off the Endurance there in response to the Grand Abolisher because I just have to, but it probably doesn't matter because he still has a Citadel and a Breach and like all these things going, and he hadn't played a land yet for turn. And he had a DRC, so like his Citadel, like the second thing he hit off of Citadel was DRC. So like so easy to clear the top and do whatever. It was beautiful. It was really fucking frustrating, honestly, because I was like the second card being DRC, I was like, come on. But finally, Grinding Station, he immediately taps the Grinding Station a couple times to mill himself, get a better idea of what he's got access to. And then he throws the breach on the stack, and I go, cool, time to fuck you up. Here is a Force of Vigor pitching a green card, targeting your Citadel and your grinding station. Okay, that resolves into your graveyard. Breach still in the stack. Here's this Endurance I would like to evoke. And he literally is just like, no. got by double, and he's hellbent at that point. Breach was the last card in his hand, so he's completely fucked by this with absolutely no way out. And the best fucking part was the Kinnan player across the table just looks at me wide-eyed after I do this and just goes, "That was heroic."
Yeah, just for perspective, I've literally had that play happen to me when I was on Florian, where exactly like that happened. Where I had Breach, I had Grinding Station, I had Citadel online. And Force of Vigor plus Endurance equals get fucked.
Get fucking got.
Yeah.
like my God.
Yeah.
So that was my favorite. That was my favorite interaction of the entire tournament, was that right there. I really enjoyed that. Yeah, that felt great. And then I untapped and won because I drew a billion cards. Absolute shocker.
Drawing cards is good.
Absolute shocker. Drawing cards, very, very good. Round 4, I ID'd. Because at that point I was in the position to just do the 2-win drawing thing. Yeah, you can hate it all you want. I don't give a fuck until they change the system. I'm going to keep using it. I don't fucking care. And so I was going to just go to lunch with people, but then Hire was like, do you want to play some games now? And I was like, yeah. And so I was like, hey, Zay, can you please get me a sandwich as you're going to a sandwich shop? And he said, yeah, what do you want? And I said, something light, like a turkey club. That'd be great. 30 minutes later, this man comes back and gives me a chicken parm. So I think he was trying to sabotage me because that was heavy as fuck. You know, he said he forgot. I don't know the truth. Thank you for the sandwich, Zane. I still haven't paid you for that, so.
Oh my God, that's hilarious.
I will pay him back. I just actually don't know how much it is. I will message him about it later. But yeah, I played some games of Hire where I switched back to Nixilis for those couple of games. And Hire fucked me up twice with a Mind Break Trap. Really didn't appreciate that. One game, I like tutored for Dockside, shuffled my hand so he wouldn't know it was what I tutored for, tried to play it, and he was like, cool, Mind Break Trap. And I was like, all right, fuck you. And then the next game, I was like, okay, Dockside or Breach or whatever. And he was like, cool, Demonic Consultation for Mind Break Trap. Why? Let me have my fun. Yeah, so he ruined my day twice when I was on Mixless. And then we were in round 5. Round 5, I was planning to just ID in. I was literally the highest 11. My opponent win percentage was disgusting. Mm-hmm. And so, yeah, literally top 11. And me and Jesse from Spite Plays, good buddy of mine I got to meet when I was down there, we're finally paired together in round 5 as the top and the third top of like 10 11s, and we got paired down together to a pod that actually had
that was
play. Great.
And
we were like, what the fuck?
No, that's great. That's what
so
needs
me
to
and
happen.
Jesse,
that's the way it should happen. Yeah.
I know. I agree that it is what needs to happen, but I wasn't. But every other pod just drew, you know what I mean? Like all the other pods were able to just draw. It was annoying that we were the ones that got paired down. And so we're like, okay. And I talked to Jesse at the beginning of the game, and I said, look, play this game 100% trying to win, like do everything as normal, but I'm comfortable if I'm in a position to win this game with a win on the stack of calling it a draw so we can both make it if you're comfortable with that as well. In like the reverse situation. He said that's fine. So we kind of agreed. And we even asked, we said to the rest of the table, we're like, hey, we're gonna play this game completely legitimately, like nothing at all pushing anything directly. But like if either of us is in a spot that like our win is on the stack and we know we are winning the game, we would like to offer a draw. Obviously this has zero negative effect on you. It just helps both of us. And they were like, that's fine. This game ended up going to a draw naturally anyway. but what ended up happening early on, I kept a hand that was turn 1, 5 mana plus 3 counter spells in hand. Going third. Ended up only drawing more interaction for like the entire rest of this game. Like literally everything I drew this game was interaction. And the interesting thing was, so I played the Kinnan and I had the Mox Amber, which was part of my mana production. And Jesse goes to play as Jessica. And I literally go like, hey, I really don't want to blow a counter on this. Like, can you please just agree not to hit my Kinnan? And he was like, why would I ever not hit your Kinnan? And I literally revealed my entire hand to him, where it was all counter spells. It was just it was 3 counter spells and an Otawara. And I was like, I can't recast Kinnan because my mana is a Mox Amber, but here's my hand. Kinnan is doing nothing for me. Like, he's not actually giving me anything at this time because it's just counter magic in my hand. And he was like, that's fair. And he like kind of agreed to the deal. And then the Crutch player was like, why the fuck would you not hit the Kinnan? Like, you might as well, right? And then Jesse was like, honestly, I'm not going to make any deals. And I was like, okay, then I have to mana drain this. And the mana drain got me enough mana to just do 1 random activation on my next turn, which completely whiffed. And I was like, great, of all the times to just fucking whiff. But I kind of sat there with like 5 mana on board forever. My Kinnan did eventually die, I think, and then I was able to recast it one time, which was pretty nice. Or maybe it didn't die. I'm not even 100% sure. This game is really weird though. But Crutch and Sakashima were kind of like taken over. They ended up with Crutch and Sakashima on the board, which I told Jesse, I was like, I wanted that mana drain for the Sakashima. Like that was the plan for it, 100%. So I think this game actually plays out a lot more fortunately for both of us if he like did agree to not hit Kinnan on that Jessica, because then like I still have that mana drain. It makes it harder for the Sakashima. The Krark probably gets dealt with, and this game goes a little bit more at parity versus Krark being so far ahead the entire time. And so yeah, Krark really dominated this game because they just had all the free spells. They had their Fierce, they had their Deflecting Swat. So with Krark and Sakashima on board, it was really hard to work around them. I actually got hit up by, which I'm sorry, this pod was Krark, Sakashima on the play, Timna Jessica from Jesse in second seat, myself on Kinnan in third, and then Dry Spell Owen Barry, guy who won Silicon Dynasty 2 on Kinnan in fourth seed. So awesome.
Wait a second. How many two Kinnan pods did you have?
A bunch, yeah.
Was it every pod?
I had 3 of my 5 Swiss rounds be double Kinnan pods.
All right.
So that's why, like I was telling you, I was like, I think there was more Kinnan than Blue Farm in this tournament. We'll get to the meta. There wasn't, but it was close. I chose to play Kinnan because in my brain, I thought it was just going to be like me and Owen on Kinnan. I knew Owen was going to be there. I knew he'd be on Kinnan, but like I thought it was just going to be like me and Owen and maybe a couple other random people. I wasn't expecting this amount of Kinnans. like it was kind of insane. So yeah, Krark and Sakashima are just dominating this game. It gets to a position that like I have a Hullbreaker in hand as like my only not revealed card for a little bit, because I was even revealing my further interaction to Jesse because I kept drawing just like Swan Song, Force Vigor, and so he kept obviously wanting to go for win attempts, and I kept saying don't do it, and just like showing him the interaction I was drawing, where like Swan Song enters your breach, don't do it. Force Vigor enters your breach, don't do it, and he was like fucking. It was obviously he knew he couldn't beat it, and so he was just like passing continuously when otherwise he could clearly go for win attempts. But I just had the interaction that worked against him, but I didn't have the interaction that worked against Sakashima and Krark. And he knew that because I was revealing it to him, which was making him like start to deal with them. Which he had some really good plays where like he would wait till the Deflecting Swap was on the stack, cast on something else, and then he would go to Path the Krark, some stuff like that. He was able to get him with Jessica a couple times, but like Krark had so much mana they were able to just keep replaying them, and the spells in their hand were so efficient with the Krark and Sakashima and so reusable that it was doing super well for them. We ended up in a spot where, again, one of my rocks on board is Mox Amber, which is really important here because Owen ends up with a Manamo as a land, and he reminds me at one point, he's like, I can untap your Mox Amber if we like need to do something so you can get an activation, because I have 5 mana on board. And so on the end of Jesse's turn before my turn, I go, are you fine to do that? And like I'll reveal the 5 cards to you and we will only put something into play that we agree on. And he was like, sure, that's fine. And so I tap my Mox Amber, he untaps my Mox Amber for me, retap Mox Amber, tap my other lands, get 7 mana, activate Kinnan. And so I reveal the 5 cards to him, and the only hit is just a random Finhorn Elves. And I go, is it okay if I take this elf? And he goes, yeah, I don't want to have to keep doing this Manamo thing, so like I'm fine to let you leave up an activation. So I was like, sweet. So I get the elf. Very important here, because that elf was perfect because I had the Hullbreaker Horror in hand. Because that elf not only got me to 7 mana for the Hullbreaker Horror, it also gives me an infinite because elf and Mox Amber goes infinite. Because Mox Amber produces 2 green and they have a collective cost of 1 green. People miss that a Dork and a Mox Amber can work. So that gave me a win line from that. So I was like, that's kind of sick. I'm just holding up my 7 mana for this entire turn cycle. And then finally, Jesse goes to, like, he replays Jessica again on his turn. And I give him the same thing. I'm like, please don't hit my Kinnan. Like, it's not doing much right now. I've got like 2 cards in hand. And he goes, fine, I won't hit your Kinnan on this one if you don't counter it. And I'm like, sweet. So I get my Kinnan survives that one. He targets the Krark. He also did he end up targeting Kinnan regardless? He might have. He did target my Kinnan. Okay, he did in fact target my Kinnan. And so what I did was I tapped 4 mana with the elf and the Mox Amber to start. And then I was like, Krark was obviously thinking about doing something. So I was like, I'll just pass priority to you. And then Krark was like, okay, I'm going to auto-wire my Krark. And I was like, sweet, now that that's gone, I'm going to flash in this Hullbreaker Horror. And everyone's like, oh. And then my Kinnan, dies. And then I'm able to untap and go to my next turn and replay Kinnan as a way to start my loop. Which worked out like absolutely perfectly. And of course the last card in Owen Barry's hand is exactly Pact of Negation, and I'm like, no. That was the only answer anyone had for it. So I did get stopped, and then we were able to just kind of work together as the table to make sure that Krark did not win on their next turn. They almost got there. They ended up doing Mind's Desire, which huge Storm Trigger gives them a bunch of free spells, and then they cast Invoke Calamity, I think it is, to get back the Mind's Desire and cast it again, which was kind of wild. So they almost got there, ended up going to a draw, which meant that me and Jesse both were able to make top 16 and then face each other again in our top 16 one. It was a cool game. Going into my top 16 game, which was my final game of this tournament, I did not win this one, sadly, due to some questionable threat assessment. I was going third. Yeah, I was going third on Kinnan. It went Blue Farm going first, Blue Farm going second, myself on Kinnan going third, Jesse on Tim to Jessica going fourth. This game was really weird. I kept a super mid hand that I was once again like really rewarded by draws, I think. Turn 3, I went for just a basalt line where everyone was kind of tapped down, didn't have shit. Really interestingly, the player in first seat, the Blue Farm player in first seat, he mystical tutored like before his turn 2 for Fire Covenant, just to like let us know he had it, which was honestly a really cool play, and did obviously it has a psychological effect on do I even bother playing my Kinnan in some situations. But so on my turn 3, he was tapped out of Fire Covenant, so I was like, cool, cast Kinnan, immediately tap mana for Transmute Artifact, and you know, no, they're talking. They're like, no one can counter this. No one has counters. But the other Blue Farm player was like, I have a pact, but this is top 16. Like, he dies if he uses the pact, so there's no positive EV for him for using the pact there. And I'm telling him, like, show me an answer, and I'll like knock up Basalt here. And no one's shown me an answer. And then finally, Jesse is like, I have 2 removal spells for Kinnan here, and I'm like, show me them. He's like, here's a path, and I'm like, okay, I won't get Basalt. He's like, I'm just gonna path you, Kinnan. I'm like, okay. Jesse does not care to politics. He's like, I'm just gonna path you, Kinnan. I was like, okay. Like after he showed the path, if he agreed, I was just gonna get the Wondering anyway. So then I just got the Wondering anyway. And this formed a really interesting dynamic because Jesse was immediately drawing a lot of cards on Tymna. Blue Farm and Blue Farm are both like great card advantage decks that can do a lot of things. But really interestingly, all 3 of these decks are on ad nauseum. They are all decks that utilize their life total heavily. And I'm the only deck that doesn't use my life total heavily.
Beating the shit out of each other.
They should have been beating the shit out of each other. But for some reason, they were all just solely focused on eliminating me first and not caring after that. That was everyone's like sole fucking mission in this game. And I like the way Jesse played. The way Jesse played from 4th seat, where he kind of targeted me, he was very clear. He was like, I outgrind Blue Farm all the time. I cannot get into a one-on-one with you. He was like, I will not win the one-on-one with Kinnan, but I think I can win the battle against Blue Farm. So like I agree with pretty much everything Jesse did. Like his targeting and focusing on me, I think made a lot of sense. And I do understand the position of the Blue Farm players to almost like feed into that and just say, let's not get dealt with ourselves. Let's just keep beating the shit out of this Kinnan and make sure that he's dead first. Like I was down to like 5 life when they were all plus 30. It was crazy. But I do think that they should have been dealing with Jesse more, and they got very lucky in a couple interactions they drew to deal with Jesse. Jesse should have won this game, I think. But yeah, they just like completely, absolutely fucked the shit out of me. I don't even know. They destroyed me. I have never been beat down so quickly in my life by everything everyone had. And I'm sitting there like, why? Like, honestly, why? Which, you know, whatever. So I lost, obviously, because they just focused everything on me. Like, no one interacted with anything anyone else did. The entire time I was existing. I was the only one interacted with. Yeah, just kill the Kinnan player first, and then proceed to take like 3 hours to grind out the rest of this game. My God, almost survived an extra turn where I was able to flash an endurance to block a Tymna and then block a Crom and whatever. So that was kind of funny. And then when I untapped on what was my final turn of the game, where I was literally dead to my One Ring trigger. I think my One Ring was going to tap for 5, or it was going to do 5 damage to me, and I was at 4 life or whatever. And my only line, I was like, okay, I have to tap my One Ring in upkeep, draw 5 cards. Oh yeah, I was going to do 4 damage to me, and I was at 3. I have to draw 5 cards, and I have to hit exactly Colossal Sky Turtle and Crop Rotation in those 5 cards, because then I could Colossal Sky Turtle, get back Endurance, evoke Endurance with the Birds of Paradise in my hand, shuffle the Emergent Zone, that was the land I pitched to Mox Diamond on turn 1, back into my library, so then I could Crop Rotation into Emergent Zone, recast Kinnan, and actually win the game. That was my only line. I did not draw those cards, so I died. And then the rest of the game was just an absolute slugfest of bullshit where they just cast 20, 30 Bowmasters, repeatedly reanimating them and Savinsing them and tutoring for bullshit with Oppos on board so they couldn't do anything. And it was honestly a miserable looking game that no one looked like they wanted to be a part of. And then finally the guy got there by just top decking a Windfall with his Bowmasters out. It was like, we good? Yeah, and that was Fishbowl.
and then you know the crazy thing is it went to top 4 and it didn't play. Yeah. Which I hate. It's fucking ridiculous. That bothers the shit out of me. It really does. Like I have a real problem with that. You know, and even like top deck points. Like in my mind, if you made top 4, you get your top 4 points. You don't get the win points if you didn't win. It's just kind of how I
I
feel
agree.
about it.
I don't think they should give the win points if they don't play.
Yeah, to me, it's ridiculous. Like number 1 out of Swiss.
I'm actually going to give that feedback to Zane because I think that's really dumb. It shouldn't say you won a tournament if you split.
Yeah, exactly. You're not a champion. You did not win. Like if okay, start the pod. And if everyone wants to concede to you, okay, then fine.
That's fine.
Yeah.
Sure.
But that's what
conceded.
But that's what needs to happen.
You didn't even play.
That's what needs to happen. Otherwise, I don't consider it a win. I'm sorry.
I agree. No, he did not win the tournament in my book at all. He just, he top 4. Good for you.
Yeah, and this is the second instance I know of. The second instance I know of that kind of thing happening, where you just like people are like, I'm tired, I don't want to play, and then you just don't play top 4. That to me is
which that's fine. If you're there for the money, like you can make that choice, but there should not be a declared winner of the tournament.
Agreed. Call it a 4-way draw. Everyone top forward. No one won. Move on.
Yeah, that's 100% what it should be. Yeah.
But good. I mean, sounds like it was fun. I really got to get back out to California. I love those California guys. I love playing with them. Had a good time when I was out there that one time, and I got to find a way out there again. But good shit. Congrats on the top 16 again on Kinnan.
Thank you. Yeah. I do think I'm gonna. I don't know, dude. Honestly, I like Talion so much right now. Talion feels so good.
You know how I
have a Twitter poll going on. Right now where I was like, what should I play this weekend? Because I was just kind of curious.
I saw it. I voted in it. I'm not gonna tell you what I voted for though.
I'm sure you did. You vote Talion?
I can tell you. Secret.
Okay. Currently there's okay. So it went up a little bit, but Talion was like heavily behind Kinnan and Omnixilus, and I was like, wow. In my brain, I was leaning Talion, so this is disappointing.
Are you gonna adhere to the poll? Like whoever wins, is that what you're gonna play?
I'm not sure. I'm not 100% sure. I don't know. I don't know. Can we just get some people to make Talion win, and then I totally will? I was curious. It is interesting how close all 3 are right now.
They're all interesting decks. Like all 3 of them are cool decks. I like all of them.
Yeah.
I've been getting
people aren't sick of Kinnan yet.
I've been getting a little bit of reps in with Kinnan, and I've been enjoying it, getting wins off it. So it's deck. I just don't like.
Yeah, I really enjoy everyone telling me that Kinnan is the easiest deck in the world, and I'm like, you're so wrong. Let's look at the meta for Fishbowl and talk about how easy Kinnan is, huh?
Yeah.
You ready for this Fishbowl? Fishbowl meta?
Let's do that. I have it up in front of me too. It's kind of wild, actually.
Kind of insane.
Yeah. So
134 entries. 24% of the meta was represented by 2 decks. A quarter of the entire meta by 2 decks. Those decks are unsurprisingly Kinnan and Blue Farm.
Yep. And then
Blue Farm had 18 fucking entries. Yep. 18 entries. That is insane for 134. And
6 of them made top 16. That's pretty.
6 of them made top 16. 33% conversion rate. That's fantastic. Like, great for that deck. Great for those people. A lot of really accomplished pilots were there for sure. But then you look at Kinnan. Kinnan had 14
That's
entries.
Right?
Yeah.
And how many made top 16?
Yeah, pretty atrocious conversion rate here. So again, one third of all the Blue Farm players made it. Only one Kinnan player made it. Myself.
That is a 7.14% conversion rate.
That means if I wasn't playing, it's 0 out of 13. Again.
Correct. Yeah.
So I don't understand how people look at these, and people are talking in Discords right now. We were talking about this right before this podcast, where they're like, "Oh, Blue Farm is way harder to play than Kinnan. It's so much more nuanced." And I'm like, honestly, how do you argue that? That's like it is such a forgiving deck. Like it is just card advantage and forgiveness versus Kinnan. You have to play correctly and pivot between various strategies to play it correctly.
Well, and there's depth to decks. Like learning a deck enough to play it at a table is like sort of depth 1, and then learning to be proficient at and be able to pilot the win lines is another one. And then you start getting deeper into the nuances, like, rounding off the edges and finding optimal plays and interactions that are obscure that you wouldn't know about unless you really understand the deck. And, Blue Farm's depth sort of ends at a certain point, and Kinnan's just keeps going. Like, there's just a lot more.
Keeps digging,
There's a lot more subtle nuances and tricks and optimization stuff that you can do in Kinnan that you don't get to at Blue Farm. You just don't.
But it's also
so I think it's
too many players nowadays.
I was just gonna say, but I think it's fair to say that it's both Kinnan and Blue Farm are not that difficult to get to the point where you can play them effectively, but getting to the point where you master them, I think Kinnan's much harder to master them.
Absolutely, Blue Farm. I would say Kinnan is much harder to top a tournament with.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair.
You know, I mean, the same way that people are like, oh, spin Kinnan, win game, even though I barely spin Kinnan anymore, but like people who don't play Kinnan just think that's a strategy. I'm like, oh, to the forensic study, win game. Like, fuck off. Dude.
Any blue deck. Any blue deck. Go get Ristic
Study. Yeah, any blue deck. Yeah, but they're blue and black. They tutor for Ristic Study. I'm like, okay, you're so original. Yeah. Oh my god, you got a Grand Abolisher and you won? Oh my god.
But I think one subtle difference though is also if you're brand new to CDH, you're just learning the format, and you go pick up Blue Farm, you could run into these situations where you're going for a wid line and you actively kill yourself. And I don't know that happens in Kinnan at the same level. Like you fail to win, Kinnan, you fail to win, and you know, but even then, like you go, you tutor for Basalt, you try to do it, it doesn't work. All right, you pass the turn and lose to someone else, right? With Blue Farm, you go for the win, you do all this stuff, and you literally lose on the spot. You cast a Final Fortune into a silence, or you
like that's such a quick learning curve.
You Thassa's Oracle Brain Freeze into a Esper Sentinel that you forgot about. Like, those kind of mistakes are, you know, Blue Farm gives you more rope to hang yourself with than Kinnan does.
Sure, there's more ways to kill yourself in Blue Farm. I don't care. It's still way easier to win a game with. Like,
yeah. Anyway,
I don't know, but also like your breach lines and things, you're going to learn really quickly as you make those mistakes. Like same thing with Kinnan, you're going to make a lot of mistakes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like sure, your first few game, I would agree. In your first ever 5 CDH games, is it easier to sneak out a win on Kinnan than on Blue Farm if you know nothing about the cards and how they work? Sure.
Yeah.
But like anyone with a level of basic competency, I think Kinnan is harder to learn and master for sure.
Fair. And you know,
but looking at
I was just say like you know, real quick, you know, we had a suggestion that was put to us, and I think we'll do a future episode on, you know, how to beat Blue Farm and how to beat Kinnan, because they're so prevalent in the meta right now.
2 most common decks.
It just makes sense that, you know, have the knowledge, have the arsenal to figure out how to beat those decks is really important. So we can definitely do that.
But yeah, going into the Fishbowl meta just a little bit deeper here. If you look at our other decks that made it, Rogsai also had an incredible performance. A lot of the Cabal guys were here. They're kind of known as the high-end Rogsai pilots. And, I mean, that's reflected very clearly by you saw 3 Rogsai pilots make top 16, Zane being one of them, out of these 6 total entries. So a 50% conversion rate on Rogsai there, which is fantastic. 0 out of 6 Tivits made it. 0 out of 6 Sisseys made it. 2 out of 4 Talions made it, which is awesome. 2 Talions is super, super sick. We had Matt Sperling on, obviously, a very
different,
original, different take on the tech, and then we had a guy named Brian. Where I'm looking at his list now, I'm curious.
A lot of similarities, but some different choices on Necropotence and Born Upon a Wind.
This looks very.
It's a big difference.
Yeah, this overall though, this looks much more similar to ours.
Yeah, but he's on, like I said, he's on the Necropotence, but he is Born Upon a Wind. That's the big difference.
I mean, actually, I think the biggest thing is he's not Unweathered Runestone.
Yep.
Which I think is one of the best cards in the entire deck. And he is choosing to run a couple of non-bows where he does have an Animate Dead in there.
Yep. He has Animate Dead and Reanimate.
Which is fine. Yeah, which I've heard some people still really enjoy that. They're like, you're not always going to have the Grafdigger's Cage. I've heard good things about it. I'm still not interested in having those non-bows. I really want to keep the consistency of the deck going, but overall, very similar strategy.
Yep.
I still like this list quite a bit.
Yeah, it's cool.
Continuing to go down, we had 1 of 4 Nagilas make it. 0 out of 3 Varigoth Blood Sky Sires. I did not see any of these. I
love these seeing decks. That here. I really do.
I love that it's there though. But the fact that there was 3 of them is just wild to me. I mean, there were 3 Malcolm Timnas, none made it. There were 3 Crom Tevishes, none made it. There were 3 Obnixilas, sadly none made it. There were 2 Analas, one of them made top 4. There were 2 Jessica Timnas, one of them top 16. That was going to be Jesse. The other one was Dylan. 0 out of 2 Kalias. But Bad Dog was very, very close. He was in a win and in around 5 that like he was at 11 points, and I think he was one of the other people that like could have been able to ID and just didn't get to a pod that allowed that. 0 for 2 Dargo Thrasios, 0 for 2 Traxa, 0 for 2 Dargo Timna, 0 for 2 Kenrith, 0 for 2 Brea, 0 for 2 Bruce Thras, 0 for 2 Tyam, and then 1 for 1, I believe, made it to top 4. Scion of the motherfucking Ur-Dragon, baby.
Yeah, I saw that. But that deck's actually pretty sick.
This Scion guy. Oh, this Scion guy is just cooking, bro.
Dude, this deck is actually pretty impressive. It does a lot more.
It really is.
Like, you see Scion of the Ur-Dragon, you think of the other Ur-Dragon, right? That's the first thing you think of. But then you look at this and it's like, actually, that's kind of cool. Like,
this deck is almost like Clam Chowder Sisay in a way.
Yes, I was just gonna say.
It has some similarities to that.
They have some dragons in here, like, but the dragons that are in here are like insane value, not just like little value, insane value. You got Ancient Brass Dragon, which basically is gonna let you reanimate a whole bunch of creatures at the same time. Got Ancient Silver Dragon, which is going to give you a massive draw engine, and then you've got the Hoarding Broodlord bits and Corvold.
So you don't get the ETB from Broodlord,
right?
Which is very, very important. But it does allow, like, one of the important things about Scion is it puts the card into the graveyard. So it enables you to animate dead your Broodlord.
Yes.
So if you have an animate dead, then you're able to just turn your Scion into a Broodlord and reanimate the actual.
But it also runs Ephemerate.
Right.
It also runs Emil.
So where the Emil is really nice, like the most important dragon is actually the Corvold. The Corvold is the Wind Dragon, because in its core, this is an Emil Dockside deck. Like, that is what it's trying to accomplish. And then turning your Scion, like, once you have Infinite Treasures, you can play your Scion from the command zone, turn it into Corvold, and then as you crack treasures, you draw cards.
Yeah, that's pretty sick.
And that's kind of the main purpose of the deck. But then it is a deck that is running Underworld Breach. So, like, you do have your Underworld Breach. You do have, I believe, Brain Freeze. Yeah, you do have Brain Freeze. You do have LED. It's like you are a generic Breach combo deck. He is foregoing Thassa's Oracle, from what I'm seeing. So he doesn't have a clean Thoracle combo. So I guess the primary goal is mostly to mill your opponents out. I'm not seeing an infinite damage line either with, like, something like Terror of the Peaks. So I think his only way to win the game is brain freezing his opponents, unless I'm mistaken.
Trying to think about what else he could do here.
Oh, you can also infinitely blink your Bowmaster with, like, a meal.
Yeah, that works too. Yep.
I think that is the primary goal here. Would be blink Bowmaster, mill out opponents, something like that. That's kind of all I'm seeing that works. He's not running wheels or anything like that.
The deck is sick though. I like it. I like it a lot.
Deck is really cool. Yeah, I mean 5 colors, like, here's the thing. You can always play off the ball commanders. If your colors are good and your deck is, like, when you're playing off the wall commanders and you're playing decks that are then built around those commanders, sometimes they can be a little bit, fringed looking. So that's, like, a really good example. Decks that can still function, but, like, fit that archetype, or something like Alondo the Seer. You know what I mean? Like, if you look at the Simic Alondo deck, it's like, okay, you're playing Alondo and you're playing a deck entirely built around Alondo, which can do very cool things and absolutely win games. And it top 16 Lotus Con, like, it is a good deck. But that's where you look at a deck like this and you're like, what is this? When you're playing a deck like this, where it's like, okay, you have realistically, like, 5 slots really dedicated to the Scion. You know what I mean? You've got, like, your, like, 4 or 5 dragons and then just a couple of other cards that work with him. But then the rest of the 96 cards, 94 cards in the deck are just 5-color good shit that wins.
It's only
the game.
4. There's only 4 dragons. 4 dragons in the deck. That's it.
Yeah, so 95 cards are dedicated to being 5-color good stuff, and then there's 5 cards dedicated to Scion.
Yeah, and it basically, you get a reanimate effect in your opener, right? Then you just got to get Dragon onto the battlefield and then activate, and you should be able to,
Broodlord.
Yeah, you just win.
Which, interestingly, he's not on. Oh, he is on Saw and Half. Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. So
he's on Saw and Half. He's not on Sacrifice, though.
Right. You just need you get any animate effect. You play your dragon, you activate your dragon, you should win the game.
But yeah, that's your meta for the Fishbowl.
It's story time. Time to tell a little bit of a story.
I want to hear this story.
We gotta go back in time. We gotta go way back in time to the.
Can I set the scene for the story first, though? My wonderful listeners, wherever you are at this time, in the car, at your desk, listening to this where you shouldn't be, wherever. Imagine you're on a very comfortable chair. One of those lazy boys that sinks you in just a few inches. You've got a nice cup of hot cocoa in your right hand with the marshmallows on top that are just starting to melt and gooify. And here comes Papa Max. He rests a leopard shag blanket over your lap. You're warm next to a roaring fireplace. He sits down in his much bigger than yours lazy boy. And he says to you this.
Yeah, so we're going to go way, way back in time. The very, very beginning of CEDH. Right? Long before Top Deck or Eminence even existed. Before there were tournaments, before even Monarch. Okay?
Before there was a Wounded Satellite.
Before Wounded Satellite even knew what Kinnan was. Before Kinnan was even printed. People didn't play CEDH in tournaments. People just played CEDH at their LGS with friends, basically, and or pub stomped on the poor casuals. Back in those times, there was this glorious, wonderful resource called the CEDH Decklist Database. And these wonderful members of our community gave of their time freely for no payment in return, and they would allow people to submit what they considered CEDH decks to them. They would go through them, they'd look them over, they'd provide helpful advice. And for the decks that really were strong, they would catalog them and put them into this wonderful, website that everyone could then go and access and see a catalog of wonderful CEDH decks that were out there that you could then pull from, play yourself, or get inspiration and ideas from. It was amazing. It was amazing. And we were able to look to these people who were giving of their time to help us advance as CEDH players. Fast forward a few years later,
Dun, dun, dun.
right? We had Tournament CEDH. We had Eminence burst onto the scene. We had people top 16ing and winning tournaments. And all of a sudden, we had a more data-driven understanding of what good CEDH decks were. We weren't relying on a handful of people to provide us the answers to what CEDH was anymore. And what started to happen is that CEDH Decklist Database started to become a little bit obsolete, quite frankly. And
they could have leaned into this.
They could have
stuff.
They could have, like, they have a database and they could, pull data from what's actually happening to determine what CEDH deck lists are. But instead,
they also could, see what deck lists are working the best for that archetype, make that the new database deck list for that archetype, rather than keep one on there forever and say we already have a version of this deck, even if it's not the best one.
They could have done that. They could have adapted with the change and been better for it and provided a better resource to the community. But instead, quite frankly, what's happened is they have been obstinate and they have decided that regardless of how things have changed, regardless of the new data that's out there, they're sticking to the old ways of doing things. And the old ways of doing things are this. Let me lay it out for you real quick, just because this is a good baseline for what happens. The way it's structured is you have managers. These are the guys at the top of the pyramid. It used to be 4 guys. It is now currently 2. We have Squirrel Mob. We have Natix. Those are the 2 managers. And then underneath the managers, we have reviewers. And these are CEDH players from our community who give of their time freely to look through these decks and provide feedback as to whether staples are missing. And then they give their feedback to the managers over which decks they feel should be admitted to the deck list database and which ones shouldn't. Then at that point, if it goes through this processes and the manager says good to go, you have 2 places the deck can go. It can either go into the main page, or it can go into the Brewer's Corner. If it's in the Brewer's Corner, the way that it works is it just sits there, and if people don't actively give feedback saying that the deck should be either removed or moved to the main page, it just gets removed, right? Interesting, right?
I wonder if that should. Can I tell a story?
We'll get into it. We're getting to it. Almost just a minute. Give me another minute.
Sure.
Give me another minute.
Sure.
So, as some of you may not know, I have a deck that I like to play called Florian. And
Valdarin Scion.
Correct. Florian Valdarin Scion, a Rakdos Turbo Naz with a mid-range pivot. But 2 years ago, about 2 years ago, I was like, oh, this decklist database thing is cool, and I think this deck is cool. I want to share it with everyone. So I submitted Florian to the decklist database.
At this time, had you had any results with Florian?
I had not. No results with Florian at that point.
Okay. Nothing yet. So first denial.
Other than just playing it with friends,
Reasonable.
It was rejected. And, I took that feedback very seriously. I listened to what they said. I'm like, you know what? Those are good ideas. Let me implement that into the deck. Let me make some changes. And then I started playing it some more. I took it to my first tournament, which was Oktoberfest, and I immediately top 16'd, and it was extremely, successful. The deck was great. It did all the things I wanted to do. I'm like, I have some evidence to show that now I've gotten this deck to a good place. I want to share this with everyone. Everyone should see this. Like, I think people will enjoy playing this deck. Submitted it to the decklist database again. Rejected. Okay? And then I proceeded to submit it 4 more times. Rejected over and over and over again. And I was told that, as it turns out, Rakdos isn't very good, and we really don't need that many Rakdos Turbo Nose decks on the database. At which point, I will hand the story over to Max here for a minute Because
So back in May of 2023, Wizards spoiled this really cool looking new commander called Obnixilis Captive Kingpin. And my buddy Kaiser from Boston, who'd been wanting to brew a deck with me, immediately sent me it, and he said, "This is the one." The second as it was released, he was like, "You are fucking brewing this with me, my guy. I want your brain on it." And I was like, "Okay." And so we brewed the fuck out of this Obnixilis guy, and turns out this deck is straight gas. And so yeah, we brewed a straight, no fucking holds barred Turbo Nas deck based around Obnixilis, where it's pretty much just Rakdos good shit with like 8 cards that are devoted to the Ob plan, which is crazy card advantage. And I immediately submitted it to the database, and this shit was immediately accepted to the Brewers Corner as the newest Rakdos Turbonauts deck on the database.
Yep.
So this happens. No, this happens, but here's where it gets interesting. So Obnixilis is added to the Brewers Corner, and decks are very often added to the Brewers Corner and then taken off. They're like, it just didn't meet what we were hoping for. Obnixilis, since it was added to the Brewers Corner, to right now, is now arguably the best Rakdos deck in the format. You can be mad about that. It is arguably the best Rakdos deck in the format. It is undeniably the most popular and most played Rakdos deck in the format. Seen at every LGS and every tournament. It has had the most tournament success of any Rakdos deck in the format. All of these things have occurred. So the deck has become, it's very good, it's very popular, it's seen at LGSs small and tournaments big alike, and it has had actual success and proven itself as a completely viable strategy in the CEDH meta. Those things have all occurred since it was added to the Brewers Corner. The result of those things occurring is they just removed it from the database.
Yep.
I'm like,
removed it from
I'm so
the
confused
database.
how you would possibly, like, in my opinion, Obnixilis is the perfect example of a deck you add to the Brewers Corner because you're like, this seems pretty viable, we're going to add this, it makes sense. It then proves all of the things that you thought it might occur. And then that's the perfect example of a deck that you move up to the main page. It has proven itself in every facet.
Yes, but Max, you're applying a rational and reasonable approach to evaluating decks to determine if they're effective CEDH decks. Why would you go and look at a deck and say, "Oh, it has success in tournaments. Oh, look, people are playing it all over the world. Look, this deck has proven itself to be powerful on streams, on YouTube, everywhere." So why would I take any of that information to make my evaluation when I could just look at the deck and decide, you know what? I don't care about any of that. Did people submit reviews through our forum that we didn't tell you about? No, they didn't submit forms?
Yeah, I don't think that's supposed to know.
Then clearly it doesn't belong in the database.
So dumb.
Yeah. But here's where it gets here's where it gets worse. Here's where it gets worse, because that is beyond asinine. Beyond asinine that Obnixilis was ejected from the Decklist database. But here's the thing. Not only did that happen, but several other decks were submitted as new decks that were summarily dismissed as well. Obviously, the big one that I'm concerned about is Florian. But here's the thing that's different this time. Okay, what's different this time is I got the inside look into the process behind the scenes. So I was able to talk to not one, but several of the reviewers who were involved in the process. And I actually saw the reviewing form. So I saw the feedback that came from the reviewers up to the managers. And here's what happened. Unanimously, every reviewer said that Florian was a effective CEDH deck, that it belonged in the database. And they argued that it should be submitted. At which point, the two managers said, yeah.
Both gave it a score
of
zero.
They both gave it a score of 0. Not only did they give it a score of 0, but one of the responses was, despite the strong arguments from the reviewers, I still don't buy it. That's what he said. I still don't buy it.
Yeah.
What?
Which is honestly at this point just an absolute middle finger to you.
Like totally. Like it feels.
They don't care. Yeah.
Like total, like just direct ditch of me and Florian, which, you know, here's where, you know, things get interesting there. Okay, so number one, neither of the managers actively play CEDH. They're not playing in any tournaments. They're not playing in local events. They're not streaming. They're not talking about this stuff regularly. They're not CEDH players anymore. So the idea that they're the ones who are now the arbiters of truth of what a CEDH deck is completely ridiculous. Completely ridiculous. It's asinine.
So fortunately, as a community,
well, I'm getting to that.
Sorry.
I'm getting to that.
Yeah,
But, yeah, fortunately, like, and where I stand, like, I'm very animated and passionate about this. But I'm not angry anymore.
You've been slighted. You've been slighted, though.
But here's the thing, like, why do you want to be in the CEDH Decklist Database in the first place? What is the desire to be in there? And, like, you know, and it's a question of clout. It is clout. We want to be recognized. You want to, like, you birthed something, and you want people to see it and recognize it as something good.
I wanted my Kinnan and Ob deck on there, and our Talion deck should also be on there.
It's not crazy. It's not like, you know, and it's a normal human desire to want that. But here's what's happened is at this point, no one's looking at the database anymore because it isn't being managed properly, and because it's not pulling the data from EDH Top 16, it's not looking at tournaments, it's not looking at the real world meta anymore. What's happened is it's sinking more and more and more into irrelevance. Complete irrelevance. So you ask me, like,
hey, guess what? Dargo Sidar is still on there.
Dargo Sidar is on there. That's right.
What was the last time you saw Dargo Sidar?
I've never seen it.
When was the last time you saw Arden Tana Hate Bears?
Never.
When was the last time you saw Rog Timna Turbo Naz? When was the last time you saw Animar?
I saw Animar. Oh, I saw Animar like 8 months ago. I saw Animar 1. Yeah.
Sure. Like, when was the last time you saw Kazaru Kima Food Chain? You know what I mean? Armix Thrasios. Like all of these decks are on the database main page, and all of these are worse than Florian, worse than Ob, worse than so many decks that they're denying.
It's insane.
That see no play in the meta. Like the decks we're describing are decks that see play in the meta, have tournament success, have become popular, have proven effectiveness. And they've still got, you know, old Golgari Hulk decks on here.
They got old Stick Fingers.
They've got old Stick Fingers Reanimation. They've got Joyrus Storm. Like, they've got OG fucking Selesnya Sisay. They've got Sithith's Enchantment. Like, no one's playing these fucking decks.
Yes. And here's
one's
the thing,
playing
guys.
these
Here's the thing, right? It's even worse than being irrelevant at this point. Like, I don't want new players to go to the database at this point because you're doing them a disservice. They're going to pick up one of these decks that just isn't in touch with the current meta, and they're going to get their asses kicked. They're going to get their asses kicked, and they're going to be like, this format sucks. I don't want to play CEDH. And that's not what we want here. That's not what we're after. Like, we want people to play. We want the community to grow. We want innovation. Like, and this stifles all of that. And it's a shame. It's a shame.
I don't think I've ever said this on the show, actually, but my first ever actual CEDH game was borrowing a guy's Blood Pod list at a random LGS one time, where I just got absolutely dunked on like 3 games in a row by a Nala on turn 2.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, this kind of sucks. Like, my first impression of CEDH was not super good because I wasn't really playing a super good deck at the time against like an actual destructive strategy, and I didn't know how to play it. I don't know.
Yeah, it wasn't the way it's a problem. And like I you know, my statement at this point is, you know, friends don't let friends use the database. It's just not a good idea. It's not. Don't send them. Do not send people to the database. Send them to EDH Top 16. Come to our Discord. We have like 60 channels right now of 60 different archetypes that are all great.
So like resources that are available for people. EDH Top 16 is an incredible resource. I mean, if you want to look at what decks have actually been performing, you can set your dates, you can set your tournament size, you can immediately get pulled to their list. Like, it's perfect. And what's really nice is a lot of the tournaments also snapshot what their decks were at that time, but they also show the link to the original list if you want to look at updates they've made since then. Yep. You also have CEDHHub.com, which is a website being formulated by Fonzie, a really well-known guy in the community, the guy for Keurig, awesome Kinnan pilot, does a lot of wonderful things, has brewed a lot of incredible lists. It's not like fully up and running and everything you want, but it does have access to the list right now. There's still going to be more features added, but definitely check out CEDH Hub, join their community. It's a really cool spot. And then, our Discord as well kind of functions as a mini version of the Commander library or database, where we just have channels for pretty much every single viable CEDH deck. So you can talk about them, but then if you look at the pinned messages in every channel, you're going to see links to the most tournament successful lists, so the ones that are actually performing the best, and you're going to see links to those specific Discords for those channels. So we want to give people access to that information so they can actually figure out what's working.
Yeah.
Because that's what CEDH is about. Not what I think should work because I think it's cool, but what is actually working. That is what optimization means. That is what CEDH is about. That is what competitive is about. And that's what CEDH is.
Agreed. 1,000%. 1,000%. So, you know, we've moved on past the database at this point. You know, they're in the review mirror. You know, on some level, I had hoped that this last time that they would finally come to their senses and admit, you know, Florian. And they did so much worse than that by not admitting it and then kicking off as well. It's just and saying
They really don't like Rakdos, bro. They really don't like Rakdos.
But
they love Dargo Sidar though. That deck is woo.
Yeah, but it's like, I've moved on past it. It's kind of like, what it reminds me of is like, okay, that teacher in high school who told you you'd never amount to anything, and then you go back to the high school and you want to like show them your new car, and they just won't even look at you and they won't talk to you. That's kind of how it feels. So what a shame. There could be an opportunity for them to embrace reality, embrace the new data sources that are out there and all these resources that exist, but they've decided not to, for no reason other than they don't feel like it. So you have what you got. Whatever. Okay, Squirrel Mob. Okay, Natix, you've made your mind up. We'll move on past you now. See you later.
Yeah, I don't care anymore.
Oh well. Yep.
Oh well.
So I think that's it for what we got today. I don't think there's anything else we need to specifically talk about other than, we are going to be at Punt City 3 on April 6th. We'll both be there up in Phoenixville. That event is totally sold out. So if you didn't get a ticket, I don't know what to tell you. We're still going to be in LobbyCon. We'll be jamming all night. Yeah. So like you can still come up there and play.
If you do want to get so I've had some people ask me about signing the Colors or Crutch playmats. So we're like, I'm having both the Colors or Crutch and the Kinnan playmats sent to me. The Kinnan ones I'm totally fine to sign. If you want your Kinnan playmat signed, just message me. Like I'll happily do that. The Colors or Crutch one, I'm saying I'm not going to sign, just because it wouldn't be reasonable for only me to be able to sign them right now, and I can't bring all of them to Punt City 3. So if you want to get your Colors or Crutch one signed, you just got to find us an event or find us in person. Anything after that, I will happily sign them for you if we just have to meet in person. But just before the initial shipment, I don't think it's right if I sign the ones that people want signed and like Max doesn't get to, because we're on opposite sides of the country. So yeah, find us in person if you want to get those signed.
Yep.
Yes. And for all the people who want the playmats internationally, I am looking into the shipping costs finally. It's just I just wanted to get the playmats here and make sure I get all that figured out before I start getting numbers. I want to be able to show a size and know what size box I'm using, because what I'm doing is I'm waiting to buy the tubes that I ship them in until they actually get here, just because we got really nice thick playmats. So I want to make sure that I don't get the wrong size tube for when they're rolled up, because that would be really unfortunate if I order over 100 of the wrong size tubes. I just don't want to mess up. So I apologize for the extra 5 days that will add before I can ship them out, but I think it's worth it.
Yeah, definitely. So I guess with that, Max, you want to take us out?
Yeah, thank you so much for listening to the Colors or Crutch podcast straight from Hospice. We apologize for our shitty voices and medium energy today. But yeah, we appreciate you guys. If you enjoyed the channel, please do not forget to like and subscribe. Always helpful for the YouTube algorithm. Please, anything we said you agree or disagree with, let us know what you think in the comments below. If you want to support the channel even more, we do have a Patreon. This Patreon comes with several different tiers, including our Discords and coaching and deck checks and such. Please feel free to check those out. There'll be a link to our Patreon in the description below. If you want to join our Discord, see all of our channels, see our own little database that we've created, feel free to join our Discord down in the link below. If you are interested in CEDH coaching, my name is Max Sternberg, also known as Wounded Satellite. I've been having a lot of success. Had a lot of people have coached have success lately, and love to help you out as well. You can contact me on Discord as Wounded Satellite or Twitter as Wounded Satellite. And I was joined, of course, by the fucking Florian man himself, dude. The guy who birthed that deck. The guy who's given that deck everything it has. Max P, the Florian guy, bro. Thank you so much for listening today, and we'll see you next time.